Hello everyone and welcome to the round 12 preview trade targets live stream for NRL SuperCoach 2023. Thank you all for joining me on this TLT of round 12. Hopefully you all can hear me okay, as I always say at the beginning of every stream probably. Thank you all for joining as well. Gotta admit, my stomach's feeling a little bit weird, not feeling 100% as we start the stream, but we'll power through. I'm sure talking some SuperCoach will cure my whatever ails me. So thank you. What will you do, Jackson, Aaron, Hamish and Xentia, Laws, Jason, a lot of regulars in the chat. Great to see you all. Lots of members because of a certain friend Tom J. I can see a few Tom J gifted me this emoticons. I love to see it. Hey Swizz, Mr. Callio, I'll let you have that nickname for me, no worries. New haircut, mate? No haircut. No haircut. It's the same as what it was the week before. I actually probably do need a haircut sooner rather than later though. Love you, Jason. My favorite thing to watch on a Tuesday night. Really appreciate that. Lots of great potties coming out on Tuesday, but appreciate the love. So yeah, we'll chat a lot today. We've got lots to go through. I think the next 2 weeks are going to be pretty pivotal, with round 13 being obviously the first major bye week of the season, and we've got obviously a few cheapies who have finally come to the fore after weeks of having no real good genuine downgrades. A couple of cheapies who didn't get named. That was very popular last week as well. So plenty to discuss, so I don't think we have any more time to waste, so let us get into it. Quick update on how I went and how I'm sitting rankings wise. So 1,244 last week, so not too bad. Small green to 8,004, so very small 321 rank increase, but look, green's better than a red, so we'll absolutely take that, and hopefully over the buys we can look to push up a little bit more. But yeah, the increases in rank have been small, but hopefully we just keep chipping away. In terms of the group league, a lot of the regulars still sitting very good in the top 150. The top 10 in our overall league are sitting in the top 150, and Deborah's still highest there at rank 17, which is amazing. And Craig with Macapaka scoring 1,433 last week, so pretty incredible week for him in round 11. So we'll get straight into the hot topics. I think in terms of we'll go through some of the TLT stuff, I guess, throughout the stream as we come to certain topics. But I think we'll just get stuck into the hot stuff straight away. So I guess the biggest initial talking point probably is around the Rooster centers. You've got Joe Manu, not named this week, and Billy Smith, who's going to be in line for his third game this week with a very low break even, -62. It's going to make a stack of money. Just listened to the SE Playbook podcast before this, and I think Spy mentioned that if he goes 45 in the next couple of weeks, he'll make 130k like pretty easily. Now, he won't play round 13. That's the obvious caveat with the Roosters. They're going to miss the bye week in round 13. But what I do like about the Roosters, so this is kind of something I'll mention for both buying Billy Smith but also holding Manu. So I know a lot of people are looking at the direct Manu to Billy Smith swap. This week, obviously, Manu, you're not getting the Dragons matchup, but it's a good matchup on paper. As bad as it sounds, without Manu in the halves, I really do think the Roosters are going to perform better overall as a team this week. I really do think that. Hutchinson is a really nice, just really steady kind of half who just slots in there, and I think that will hopefully maybe open up things for Kiri and for Teddy. I think that combination with Manu in the halves doesn't seem to really work for us. I say us, I am a Roosters fan for anyone who doesn't know. So I think people who I really like the Billy Smith buy this week, so I think he'll have a good week this week again. He's putting up really good numbers. His base stat average, you can see below me, 44 in his first 2 games. Now, I do think it's a little bit of an outlier, not something we've normally seen. I was going back through some of Billy Smith's numbers in the last couple of seasons, and what I noticed from last year and the year before, when he plays full-minute games, I find his base tends to be around the kind of 29 to about 33, which is still really good for a center wing. It's pretty decent, but not quite the 45. So I'm not fully buying into that this 45 is now exactly what he's going to be scoring. I just think he's come back and he's obviously trying to make a fist of getting the center role, given that the Roosters have currently vacated one of the spots with Manu being named in the halves. So I think Smith is trying maybe a little bit harder in that sense. But I still do like him as a buy this week because the price is good, 290k. Really good floor at the moment that he's showing with 45s in base. Even if that drops to 30, 35, look, you'll take that in a down week potentially. And I like the little run that the Roosters have got. In round 12 this week, you buy him. He's got the Dragons. Obviously doesn't help you for round 13. So is not someone who I'd advise selling any round 13 players for, just because of, just the fact that you missed the round 13. But I like the fact that he comes back in round 14, which is a pretty crucial week with Manly, Parramatta and the Knights all on the bye. You get him for round 14, home match against the Bulldogs. I think that's a game, obviously, he can score points. So one thing I did want to speak about with Manu and Billy Smith is also about Sam Walker, because I think he's obviously got a bit of an impact into how things will shape up for how the Roosters line up. So I confirmed this with NRL Physio. He posted earlier today that Walker had suffered some kind of ACL sprain, which is going to keep him out for 4 weeks, and that's 4 to 6 weeks from when he actually first sustained it, which I think was about a couple of weeks. So what he thinks is that Walker would probably be available for first grade at the earliest, round 14, but he also mentioned that, that's what's the chances of Walker being named straight away back in first grade after this sprain. It makes me think and also want to hold on to Manu a little bit more too. I do think Manu is going to be back in round 14 as well, just based on NRL Physio's Patreon post, which I do highly recommend as well. The nature of the injury doesn't seem to be that serious. I feel like maybe the Roosters decided, look, granted they're not performing very well, but it's a Dragons game, so hopefully they can win without him. They can let him rest for the next 2 weeks, and then he'll be back in round 14, hopefully 100%. He is dual now, Joey Manu, so all those dual position changes came in. I do like holding on to him for potentially a good matchup in round 14 against the Bulldogs. And I do think that based on that kind of prognosis with Walker, it seems like there's maybe a decent chance that Manu will stay in the halves. We just know he's much better at 5'8". I've got some numbers below me as well about Manu's season average, including both centre wing and 5'8 games, but also his standalone numbers as a 5'8". You can see that the base numbers go up massively. Like last week, Manu based like 50 point. No, not last week, sorry, he got injured. But I think it was the week before, he based 50, and then it was 38 the week before that, 43, all when he was playing at 5'8". So I think we know Manu at 5'8", I think is just better for Supercoach, maybe not for the Roosters. So I personally think Manu, if you can afford to hold him, and you've got the depth, I do think he is a hold. He's at a price where you can make some use out of it. No, I know the Manu to Smith trade does get you 300 plus K, so it is very appealing in that sense. But I do think that there's maybe an opportunity where you can look to hold Manu and maybe becomes a little bit lower owned, and you can look to have him available for you in round 14, and I still think he'll be in the halves. And look, I'm looking at the Roosters run between round 14 and 18. Penrith is obviously very tough in round 15, but they do cover the round 16 bye, so Manu will be available for that. And that will be a match that Teddy will not be there. Very good chance potentially Manu plays fullback that week against the Knights. That might be a great game to have Manu. Canberra in round 17 might be okay. Manly could be okay based on how they're currently looking. Then he's not playing round 19. I just view this little bye period. If you can afford to hold Manu, I do think he will be someone who may be able to pay it back if he's not playing in the centre position. So for me, I'm personally going to try to hold on to Manu, and that would be my advice. But Billy Smith, I do think is worth a trade in for sure. Some people are asking, I think a little bit early in the stream, is he potentially a trap? I don't think he's a trap. Like, the Roosters do hold him in very high regard. Like, any opportunity that they can get him into the team, that I feel like they do try to do so. So I think he obviously shows enough in training or whatever in terms of being a good influence on team chemistry or whatever it may be. I do think that whenever there's an opportunity for him to play, he will. So I do like buying Smith. Now, in terms of who you trade out for, you've got the likes of a Turuva, Alamotti, a couple of people mentioning Will Warbrick, maybe people who still own a Pereira. None of those four play round 13, so you're not actually losing out anything in terms of buy numbers. So any one of them, I think I don't mind going down to Smith, because you're cashing in. Let's say a Warbrick, I think he's still around the high 400s from memory. The Storm do play the Dolphins this week at Suncorp, which is not the easiest matchup. Warbrick's 415k. Him down to Billy Smith will net you about 130k, plus Smith could make another 150k. So you could be making about 200k out of that trade. So I don't mind going him. Turuva or Alamotti, that's something I'm also kind of considering at this point in time, as in who I would like to trade. Both of them kind of did quite well last week. Alamotti 59, Turuva 65. You do get more out of selling Turuva because he's obviously a little bit higher price than Alamotti. But looking at the draws for both of them, like both Alamotti and Turuva will cover round 16. But I'm looking at the Bulldogs. They come back in round 14 to Roosters, which obviously look Roosters is not the hardest matchup as it looks at the moment. Parramatta, Sharks, not amazing, but looking at Panthers, they do have the Dragons in round 14. Again, it's a crucial week. If Taruva plays, could be a very nice hold and very nice play in that week. Covers also round 17 when the Bulldogs do have a bye. And then looking round 19, Panthers do miss out. But I'm looking at the couple of runs for Taruva and Alamotti. Also just going with the team being a little bit better of an attacking team. I would trade out Alamotti ahead of Taruva, but I really think, like, let's say if you need the extra 50k to make another trade, it's much of a muchness, but I think out of the two, I would prefer to hold on to Taruva. He's a left winger for the Panthers. I think it's just better than having the left centre of the Bulldogs, basically. If you have Warbrick, I think I'd probably trade Warbrick over the other two, although he has been looking a little bit better, to be fair. He did score 78 last week, but I think a lot of people may have moved off the likes of Warbrick and Khan-Pereira already. But anyway, that's kind of my summary, I guess, on the whole Manu Billy Smith situation. Hopefully that covered off most of your main questions. This is actually something interesting I'll call out from Alex. So he's thinking of moving Manu to the 5'8 spot and trading out Isaiah Katoa for Billy Smith. This is one of those situations where I quickly did think about it, but depending on how you're sitting for round 13, Isaiah Katoa will cover that week, and he is very crucial for round 14 as well. He does play that week. And another thing with Isaiah Katoa that I've thought about just for future trades, his dual status of being 5'8 and halfback could be very, very handy. If you're especially looking at, we'll probably dig into this more next week about the likes of Nicho Hynes and Nathan Cleary, and who do you hold, or which one do you sell? One of them, do you sell both of them? If you're not really confident in the halfback options, you can just switch to a 5'8 like Cody Walker in round 13 using Isaiah Katoa. So his dual status does come in handy, I think, in future weeks. So he's not someone who I'm urging or rushing out to sell at this point. Anyway, that's my kind of take on the whole Billy Smith situation. I think the next big cheapie or downgrade option to discuss is Harrison Edwards. Now, I must admit, I don't feel as kind of opinionated or like have much as I haven't really probably put as much thought into the whole Harrison Edwards situation as probably I have with Billy Smith. I probably just feel a little bit more, I don't know, in the know about Billy Smith, if that makes any sense. Whereas with Harrison Edwards, I really have not heard anything about him up until the last few weeks that he's been playing. But he has been named to start this week at lock for the Dogs, which is obviously encouraging. He was initially named on the bench last week, but he did switch on game day to the starting team. And he's playing some big minutes, 62, 58, and 68 minutes are the last 3 minutes that he has played. He's got some pretty decent base stats in that time. Granted, his first game was 36 points in base in 62 minutes. It's not fantastic, but it's been steadily increasing. 36 base, then 46, then 57 base. So last week was the game where you had the most base stats, plus you add the fact that he did score a try as well. So that bumped him up to a 94. He's now got a negative 46 break even, 297k. So he does look very appealing, especially in the front row forward spot where we really haven't had a great cheapie, I think, till date. Now, to be perfectly honest with Edwards, like I'm looking at Artie's comment here saying that he's probably earned his spot at lock and don't see anyone else starting over him for a while. It is probably encouraging that he's been named to start, and someone like Fatella Mariner, who was starting previously, I believe at the lock spot, has now moved to the bench. So he is looking pretty good in that sense. Obviously looks like he's impressed, and the thing is, even the middle forwards at the Bulldogs like Max King continuing to play, but I think he's playing through this rib cartilage issue, which for middle forwards, it's a really bad injury to have because it's a pain tolerance issue. And so you can see Max King's output has reduced over the last couple of weeks since he's probably sustained this rib cartilage issue. Just looking at Max King, like before he was doing quite well, people were considering him as a buy, but in the last 2 weeks he's gone, or last 3 weeks actually, 49, 47, 38, and the minutes have also reduced. So I think at the same time as that kind of has happened with Max King, you're seeing Harrison Edwards come in and play some increasingly bigger minutes as well. So I think it looks like at the moment things are looking good for him minutes-wise and job role-wise. I do think they have someone like Chris Patolo coming back who may potentially eat into minutes, but I think at the moment, if you are looking for a change up in your front row forward, I've got some options here who I think maybe people will consider as a bit of dead weight, if you want to call it that, on their front row forward benches, maybe a Moali, Murdoch-Masila, Franklin Pele. I know Ben Murdoch-Masila hasn't been doing that great, and he's been named on the bench again this week, but he's one who I think if you have him, I would probably still just keep him because, look, he will cover round 13. He might get you 25 to 30 points in that week, which is better than nothing. Moali, though, I know NRL SuperCoach Sponge, I think, had asked me about one of the trades he was looking to do was Moali to Edwards. Look, as a pure cash move, obviously doesn't net you a lot on face value. You're only netting about 8k, but it's about what Edwards is going to make, I guess. And in terms of Edwards' buy coverage, I'll quickly take a look at the Bulldogs draw coming up, although we did actually already just look at it with Alamotti. But with Edwards, obviously he misses round 13, but he will cover round 16 if he is still playing at that point. Misses round 17, which could be a little bit tricky, but as a bench front row forward, he might be okay. And if he still has a spot, he will cover round 19. So if you can cover round 16 and 19, he could just be a little handy play for you to have in your front row forward. So I don't mind him from a buy coverage perspective. I don't imagine a lot of people be buying him to be playing him week on week. But yeah, for one, he's one who I think is an okay move. I know some people are asking about, is it sideways or is it worth like an extra trade to go like a Moali to Edwards? I think that really becomes team dependent. How many trades have you used to date? If you're using like your last boost, do you reconsider that potentially you want to make that move as well? But I do think there's a good chance where he does make some decent coin and he could just become a really nice handy option moving forward. So it's a bit awkward that both Edwards and Billy Smith are not round 13 playing options, but just kind of what's happened this week. Footy Editor saying Pele plays, does he not? So the status that I put there, injured, playing, not playing, is just based currently on this week. So Franklin Pele, I believe, dropped out of the 17 for the Bulldogs. So at the moment, I believe he's a non-player. That's kind of the reason why I've put him as a not play. And yeah, to be honest, Franklin Pele, like if you can do Pele to Edwards, I think obviously that costs you like 80k, but it might just help you during this origin period just to know that you've got maybe a little bit better backup than Pele, because Pele, even when he's been playing, he gets maybe 10, 15 minutes, scores maybe like 8 to 10, 15 points, and is a bit of an AE nightmare. So I don't mind if we've kind of got an opportunity where if you got some of this dead weight on your front row forward, you can just kind of clean it up a little bit. Yeah, I'm looking at it here. So Pele's not named in the 17 for the Dogs, and he was taken out of the team, so he's currently not a play for this week. So that's kind of, I guess, my general thoughts on Harrison Edwards. Ian's asking, what about when Kickout comes back? To be perfectly, I don't know how that would affect Edwards because Kickout would just be coming back on to the edge. But even then, I think Kickout, it was a pretty long-term injury. I think it was like 16 weeks when he had sustained that pec issue. And look, it could be one where even when he's fit, he might not come back straight away to an 80-minute role. Look, Kickout saying on the NRL casualty ward is round 22. So I don't think it's an issue, especially if you're looking at Edwards as maybe just a nice plug and play over this bye period. Come round 22, you kind of, you're done with that, I guess, at that point. So yeah, not really too fussed, I guess, on the Edwards trade. Personally, with my team, I haven't fully decided yet if I have a good way to get him or if he helps me out, because I'm sitting on about 9 for round 13, which would mean if I want to get to 13, if I didn't do anything trade-wise to get round 13 players in this week, it would mean I have to boost next week to bring in 4 round 13 players, which I could do. Okay, Pele's been suspended for 2 weeks. Okay, I'll fact-check that from Tom J, but if that is the case, then that probably makes sense. But even then, Edwards has been playing some pretty good minutes, even though if Pele was there or not. I don't think Pele is going to make an impact on Harrison Edwards' minutes if we're thinking it that way. Alrighty, so that's kind of, I guess, covering off the main 2 cheapies. I'll quickly maybe just touch on, let's break up the cheapie chat. Let's go to some Hosking chat. So Hosking is probably the next kind of big topic, I think, of the week, and he is pretty popular on the sells. So I kind of view last week as a bit of an outlier. Played 28 minutes or played 31 minutes, got sent off for a HIA, and they decided not to bring him back. And he's been named to start again this week, which was encouraging. I was kind of looking at team lists that, Liam Martin coming back in last week. If they want Liam Martin to potentially press his claim for Origin, maybe he plays more minutes. Thankfully, Panthers are the first game of the round, so we can have full flexibility of trades. I'm not sure if this is going to happen, but let's say hypothetically Hosking got moved to the bench and Liam Martin was named to start in Hosking's place. I would probably sell Hosking straight away. If he stays starting, he's at a break even where I think, you can see below his last 3 games minutes. So obviously the 31 is a bit of an outlier, but what I have also put below me is the points scored in games where he's played over 60 minutes. So we're looking at it here, 117, 80, 61, 62, 55, 67. So we're looking at some pretty solid numbers. So let's even say he gets about 55, 60. With a break even of 74, he might not leak a lot of cash this week. So I think he's someone who you can still look to play this week. And I know a lot of people may be looking at Hosking to Lukey. So Lukey at 523k, he does have a break even of 14. And let's say if Lukey goes 15, he might be 15, sorry. Let's say he scores 50, he might get to like 560k. So you might have to pay, instead of going down 20k, you might have to pay, let's say $30,000. But $30,000 is not a huge amount. So I'm kind of feeling okay potentially about just holding Hosking for at least one more week if you can. And it gives you another week to look at Lukey. Other second or forward options who I think people are looking at, especially for round 13, looking at the Eels, Hopgood and Madison. Hopgood absolutely killed it last week. I do like Hopgood as a buy potentially. He is now getting pretty expensive at 660k and a very achievable break even at 63. Obviously, the big news with the Eels is that Sean Lane is now out for like 6 to 8 weeks with a hamstring injury. That probably does bode well for minutes in the second row forward for the Eels. So Cartwright, for example, has been named to start on the left edge. But he could maybe split minutes with what's his name? With Madison potentially could play some time on the edge and also in the middle, which could just open up more minutes in the middle for Hopgood. Junior Paulo will be out for Origin too. So I think Hopgood is looking good at the moment as an option. You just need to be conscious, obviously, of your round 14 numbers because the Eels are going to be on the bye in round 14. So that's something I would probably, that's something I'd just be wary of. I don't mind holding off one more week. And also I'm personally thinking of maybe going like Hosking to like a Tohu Harris next week is something that I might be doing. So I kind of feel okay about keeping Hosking for one more week, but if you want to sell this week, I don't hate it. He doesn't cover round 13, so let's say you're in that situation where, let's say you've got 8 this week for round 13 numbers, and you don't have a boost left. So the max amount of trades that you can do over the next 2 weeks is 5. So you need to do 5 trade-ins of round 13 players to get to 13 in round 13. That's the kind of situation where I say, look, if you need to go a week early on Hosking because you've planned other moves next week, then in my eyes, I think it's okay, but he's not a must sell in my opinion. I can see Humble saying Hosking to Britton Nikora. Really do like Nikora. The only reason I didn't put him on this table here was because he doesn't cover round 13. He's definitely someone who I think will be very interesting in round 14 because he's been absolutely killing it, and especially playing outside of Nico Hines on that right edge. He's just getting attacking stats every week. I know, like, his base stats not the best, but I kind of want to look at him as just like he's got higher upside. Like, he's got an average of 75, killing it. I do think he's a great trade-in. He's 718k, so it's a bit pricey, but I think I don't mind getting him in round 14. He will miss round 17, which is a bit of a down, but after round 17, he has no more buys left. So longer term, from maybe round 14, I like Nikora as a potential trade-in. I love this question from Excentia. Do I own a Stupinian? I 100% own a Stupinian. This is FPL, by the way, people. And I own a Stupinian, and I was always going to play him. I know a lot of people got lucky this week with people auto-subbing him in. I was always playing him. Anyway, that's all I'll mention about FPL for now. This is a SuperCoach stream after all. I did put Scott Sorensen on the list here because I thought surely there might be a couple of questions about is Sorensen a buy, even if it's just for making cash. Not my favorite in my opinion, because yes, he's got a negative break even, but he is already expensive at 636k. So it feels like a bit too much to be paying for him. You've got a lot of other options around him, like Hopgood is a similar price, Lukey's much cheaper, Madison's a little bit higher as well. Mr. Callio saying IPAP could be an option as well from round 14. I think round 14, I think given the next 2 weeks, we're probably going to be more focusing on the first buy. A lot of these teams like Sharks, Tigers, I think we'll probably talk about them a little bit more in detail from round 14 onwards. But yeah, there are definitely a lot of, this is a thing as well that should be conscious of. There are a lot of good 2RFs, I think, out there. So you don't want to go too hard on round 13, maybe if you don't have to, just so you can maybe look to capitalize on a few different pods from round 14 onwards as well. Connolly Lemuelu, so I haven't got him on the list here. Again, price-wise, I'm thinking price. He is quite expensive now. He's 605k, and he's still got a negative 13 break even. He has been doing well. The Dolphins probably do have one of the better draws during the whole kind of State of Origin schedule period. So let me quickly just flick to this chart here. So if we look here at the Dolphins draw, they'll cover round 13 and 14, which is really handy. They do miss round 16, but 16 is an easier week to cover. Just if you look at the players and teams who are available around 16, if I find it's an easier week to cover. And then he does play round 19 as well. So I think from buy coverage, I really like the Dolphins. So, another reason why I don't mind holding on to the likes of Isaiah Katoa. If I have to at a pinch, he will cover most of those big bye weeks, so I like him. Lemuelu does cover that too, and he is looking pretty impressive, don't get me wrong. Remind me, is he playing on the left edge? I have a feeling that Melbourne Storm, who the opposition is for the Dolphins this week, have a tendency to leak points to the opposition left back rower. So I think this week, Lemuelu, frustratingly for me as a non-owner, I think he will have another good week. And he does play the Dragons in round 13. So look, now that I'm saying it, it does look pretty intriguing. He's dual as well. So he's got a lot of things going for him. I don't know, I feel like he's just a bit pricey. 605k. I'm kind of getting the vibe of did I miss the boat? But yeah, he still actually has got a lot of things going for him. So to be honest, I can't even knock the Lemuelu trade in potential. Maybe to quickly wrap up some of the thoughts on the 2 RFs that we've got listed here. I do think it's, again, with holding Hosking, maybe for another week, especially someone like a Madison, someone like Mr. Callio's mentioned it here, even a Hopgood. Maybe Hopgood's more of a long shot, but just in the off chance one of these guys gets named for round 13 and misses round 13 because of being named for Origin, it's kind of a kick in the guts if you get them a week early. So it's kind of another reason why I feel like if you can, maybe this week, you can look to go to the Edwards, the Billy Smiths, create some funds, and that maybe gives you some flexibility for your trades next week when you can trade in round 13 guys who you 100% know will be available in that week. And it also gives you another week of like, look, injuries can happen, as bad as it may sound. I would never wish this, but Helam Lukey, look, he could pick up a knock this week, misses round 13. You go on early on him this week, and it just doesn't work out for you. So those are kind of the small things I think also that if you've got any opportunity to hold off for another week, I think it's prudent advice. I want to call it that anyway. Okay, a couple of other downgrade options. So probably the main one I think we haven't talked about yet is Ben Trbojevic. So the news came out today that Kelma Tuolangi from the Manly Sea Eagles is out for 6 weeks. So that does open up a spot on the edge for Trbojevic. Burbo, let's just call him Burbo, it's a bit easier. There's 3 Trbojevics rolling around there at Manly. He is at a good price, 236k. He is dual, which is also very handy. Just need to be conscious, I guess, of, again, he will miss around 14. That's probably the only knock against him. But if I look at him from a buy coverage perspective, so Tuolangi was out for 6 weeks as of, let's say as of this week. So if we look at it here, he'll be missing round 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 17. So you will get Burbo for, assuming he keeps his spot, you will get him for both round 13 and for round 16. So I think he will be a good little kind of coverage for you in that period of time. As long as you can cover him in round 14 and he doesn't need to be a play for you, I don't mind Burbo as an option potentially to just give you some coverage over rounds 13 and 16. Like if you need the downgrade this week and you already are going, say, a Billy Smith, or say you're doing a downgrade in your 2RF and you can't get to Edwards, Burbo is probably the 2RF downgrade to go for. So look, there is obviously some risk with him. He could come out of the team, but it looks like he's won that spot on merit. So I think he's also someone that I think, given the circumstances, if you can't get to the Smiths or the Harrison Edwards, he probably would be the person I'd recommend as a downgrade. But I do think that Edwards and Billy Smith are better cheapies over him. So those are probably ones I would prioritize. But Burbo could be a consideration for sure as well. And I think there was a comment just before I came on stream asking about Burbo. Let me quickly read out that question if I can find it. It was from Chris, yeah. So saying, is Burbo a good option with a 6-week window to A, play the buys, and B, possibly permanently take the spot and keep for the rest of the year? Look, I'm not sure as much about that second part about him being potentially a keeper for the rest of the year. Probably don't buy that much. But for covering the buys and to make some money with handy dual, yeah, look, I can see it from that front. A couple of other downgrades. So I'm seeing a question here from Hamish saying, do you think Kroger to Valence Tavara is fine to free up funds? Look, Tavares, look, there is something to note. So Tavares obviously hasn't been named this week with Branko Lean back and named to return, but there is some doubt about Ewan Aiken, who apparently actually has historically had an issue of hamstring injuries, which is the injury that he's got at the moment. The Dolphins, I think, play on Friday. Just going to quickly find this out. No, sorry, they play on Saturday night, so it's a little bit later in the week than probably what you'd hope for. Maybe there's a chance that Valance comes. He has been named in the reserves. There might be a chance maybe he comes back if Ewan Aiken is a late out, but I wouldn't want to be banking on it. So I think if you can't afford to wait until then, I'd probably just go down to Burbo as your downgrade in the CT dub if Valance. If you can still afford whatever downgrade or trade you need to do, I'd probably just go to Burbo instead of Tavares. And look, if Tavares is named again, and look, if Tavares plays this week, and then maybe he gets named again in round 13 and is set to make a lot of money and maybe be a longer term option, I'm sure there's someone in your squad who you could look to maybe trade out for him just to capitalize on that. So I think I wouldn't be going to Tavares this week. I wouldn't be going down to him if you can avoid it. I'd probably be going instead to Burbo, although in your situation with that particular trade, I wouldn't be doing it until round 14 because Coroca does cover round 13, unless you're a head-to-head player and you don't care about overall. All right, yeah, a couple of others. So Cody Nikarima is someone that I think people who own Sonny Luke have been looking at. He is a little bit more expensive now at 376k. He has been looking pretty good for the Dolphins. I mean, the Dolphins, to be honest, have just been looking pretty amazing, to be honest. I think they've defied all the expectations that people had coming into the season. But he's had a couple of good weeks, 75 in round 10, 68 in round 9. So that's set him up for a minus 28 break even. Do note, though, that he is in some doubt for this week, and I think Anthony Milford is on standby. So, look, he might be an option at hooker, but to be perfectly honest, if you're going Sonny Luke out for a round 13 option, I know it's not easy, just from a funds perspective, but I would be just instead trying to go for like a Marshall King or maybe like a Reece Robson. Both the Dolphins and the Cowboys have got pretty good schedules during the bye period. The Cowboys do play round 13 and they play round 14. They also do play round 16. They do have a bye in round 15, but that's easy enough to cover because it's a standalone week that's not affected by Origin. Dolphins, we kind of spoke about a little bit just before. They also cover round 13 and 14, and they covered round 19. So I think if possible, I'd be moving to one of those. They're just safer guys. So I think, if you go Sonny Luke to Cody Nikarima, the way I see it is Nikarima is going to be eventually another trade out again down the line. Whereas if you can just go to Marshall King Robson, you could feasibly be holding them for the rest of the season as a second option behind maybe a Harry Grant. So I think that's just another thing just to help manage your trades a little bit. But I do understand that Sonny Luke up to Marshall King is like 400k. But look, if you're doing big downgrades of like a Welch to a Harrison Edwards, for example, maybe that gets you the funds to be able to afford to get to a Robson or a Marshall King instead. So I don't love Nikarima as an option. Buller, I kind of feel maybe you probably, if you wanted to go him, you've probably gone him already. I don't think he's in the top 10 most traded in either, but I thought I'd just mention him here anyway. Just been very solid, very happy with the trade of him last week as well to create some funds. And I've mentioned Kyle Oluwapu here as well. We've been named to start for the Bulldogs this week. I don't imagine people will be looking at him given that they probably own Isaiah Katoa, who covers round 13. Just someone to keep on radar, I think, for round 14 onwards from the Bulldogs. All right. So we did kind of just start touching on it a little bit, but we will probably get a little bit more into kind of the hooker spot and potentially who is the better option for round 13 out of, say, like a Reece Robson or a Jeremy Marshall King. So to be honest, I prefer Marshall King, even though he is 100k more expensive. I just like that they've got good buy coverage all the way through. They missed round 16, but I also just think Marshall King has shown a little bit more than Robson for me so far this year, averaging 10 points more. He's getting more attacking stats, but I do think that he is it's not fluky, for example, that he's getting those attacking stats. I think he's probably the one who I would prefer. He is obviously, though, a little bit more expensive than Reece Robson. So if money is an option, if money is a consideration, you need to go a bit cheaper, then Robson is probably the guy, I think, for coverage for round 13. But I do, on just straight head-to-head, I do prefer Marshall King. Even at 100k more expensive, I just like what I've seen out of him. He just passes my eye test, I think, a little bit more than a Robson so far this year. And I do like the Dolphins' kind of long-term buy coverage as well. I think probably next week we'll get into it a little bit more about who the Origin players we're looking to hold, sell. Grant is definitely an option who can be sold, but equally could be held given that he's not super, super expensive. And if he's sharing minutes with Ben Hunt, he could be an option who still backs up for us. So I went into it a lot last week. I'll probably kind of dig it out and discuss it a little bit more next week. But I did a whole breakdown, I guess, of every team's rest periods post each State of Origin game. And we can use that as a kind of a predictor, I guess, of potential rests for some of our Origin guns after each of the Origin games. But with the way it works for the Storm, it's not a bad kind of backup period they've got. Like, Grant will miss 13, 16, and 19. But the only game that he may potentially be at risk of, I've got round 17 as well in there. Just round 17. So could only be the 4 games potentially. So he might be someone that we could look to hold. But I don't think either of these two is really a big trade-in option or discussion point this week. I think it's probably something we'll get into maybe a little bit more next week. In terms of other round 13 hookers, Warriors might be an option. So maybe a Wade Egan. But Egan has been sharing minutes with Freddie Lussick off the bench. So I think that's kind of killed him at the moment as an option. The Knights, look, maybe Phoenix Crossland. I need to check if Crossland is actually available in the hook spot because he's been pretty handy, to be honest. He's at a pretty good price still. I think he also has 5'8" dual flexibility, which is quite handy as well. Just going to quickly look at Crossland. No, sorry, Crossland is 5'8" halfback, so you can't even get him at hooker, so that kind of kills him then as an option. Anyway. Starling, actually, yeah. So I'm seeing Pablo Escobar saying thoughts on Tom Starling. So I have to probably give a shout out to the Whisperer here from the Dual Position Podcast. He's a massive Starling fan. Any opportunity he can get him into his team, he will. He has been named to start, although I've noted that Danny Levi is back now from that jaw break that I think he got ages ago. And I think that's because Zach Wolford has suffered a concussion. So I'm reading the team list. So Wolford out with a concussion, but Danny Levi is back. I would give it another week on Starling. I wouldn't want to go early on him. I'd want to see what happens next week if Wolford is, say, back from a concussion. What's the go in terms of the rotation? Because then you have Starling, Levi, and Wolford for 2 hook spots. It could just be very messy. And we know Starling, despite what he promises, he always seems to fail expectations because his minutes just get stuffed around by Ricky. So maybe he's an option, but not one I'd probably be considering this week at all. Moz saying, is Cheese a trade out if I can get to Jerry Marshall King or Robson? I think so, because I think Robson or Marshall King could feasibly be your backup hooker for the rest of the season. Whereas Cheese, I don't think will be quite at that level. So yes, I do think for me, Cheese would be a trade out for one of those two. Extenti saying Cody Nikorima 63 round average. We did speak about Nikorima a little bit, just in case you missed it. Sorry, I don't know if you've been in the chat for the last bit as well. I did chat a little bit about Nikorima. He is in some doubt this week as well. I think he had picked up a cork at training. So again, he's probably not someone who, look, ideally he wouldn't be playing this week, and he won't change in price because he has got a negative break even, and maybe can get him back next week if he does play there. But he has been playing well, so a good chance that even if Milford's back, Nikorima continues to play at 6. And yeah, as Mudcrab says, he's been playing phenomenally well. Don't think he keeps it up. I mean, yeah, he might regress a little bit, but at that price, he might still just do a job for you. Aaron saying, should I keep Egan and Grant at hooker? Wade Egan, it's a tough one. He does cover round 13, but I think the way that he's sharing minutes with Lussick doesn't make him... he's one of those players who, yeah, it's kind of, you feel trapped, right? He plays round 13, but he's really not someone who you want to be keeping. He's one of those guys, to be honest, if this rotation keeps happening where he's sharing minutes with Lussick, he's not someone who I want to be holding. Also, concussion risk. He's suffered a couple of concussions. So yeah, I'm looking at Egan, 59 minutes the last 59 minutes and then 36 minutes. So Lussick has been getting a few extra minutes. So it's a tough one. I'd probably would be making a move at hooker probably next week. And it would be either one of another one of Egan or Grant out for one of those kind of two of Marshall King or Robson. But yeah, I think Egan is one of those players who I think if, again, that rotation happens, I'd be comfortable selling in round 13, even if he plays, as dumb as that sounds, because I just don't know how much he's going to offer you. Although, actually, you know what, now I say it, if he's there round 13, I think you hold, and maybe you just go Grant down to one of those two. All right, that's kind of my breakdown, I guess, of the hookers. Quickly, we'll touch on fullbacks, because I know there may be some people who are still holding on to the likes of Teddy, Turbo, Reece Walsh. To summarize it fairly quickly, look, Turbo's not looking 100% at all. There is potentially a chance that he does not get named for Origin. If not, he rules himself out. I think if that is the case, I would be holding on to Turbo. Irrespective, I'd be holding on to Turbo until next week. See what happens. If he gets named for Origin, easy sell, because I've got it probably... I think I'll quickly go to this slide here. I'll quickly go to this first. So Manly, they've got the bye round 14, 2-game turnaround after State of Origin Game 2, and a 2-game turnaround after Game 3. Add in the fact that it's Turbo. I put him as a prime candidate to get rests, so potentially misses 6 games during the whole State of Origin period. So for me, Turbo gets named round 13. Easy, automatic sell. If he's not in Origin and he's playing, hold. He could even be a buy potentially next week for people who don't own him. Reece Walsh, if you own still, with Reynolds being out this week, look, Reece Walsh should be goal kicking. Granted, it's not the easiest matchup against the Panthers, but look, at a break even of 39, I think that's pretty feasible. So I think he's definitely a hold as well. And the way that Ponga played last week, it looks as though, in my opinion, Ponga will probably be the one who plays fullback for Queensland. So I think Walsh will probably be available for you in round 13. So I think if you still own him, I'd probably be holding. Teddy's not 55k. Sorry, that's a typo. I'll get his proper price. I mean, look, to be fair, if the Roosters continue the way they are, Teddy could be 55k at some point. He's 557k. Look, he's got a break even of 81, but as discussed kind of at the beginning with Billy Smith, I do think that with Hutchinson coming back, it could open up Teddy. It's a Dragons matchup. I would be 100% holding this week, and then, yeah, I'd probably sell Teddy in round 13 as well. Mudcrab says, Drew Hutchinson should get the halfback 80-minute role for at least 4 to 6 weeks minimum. Not a bad shout to throw in as your 7th 2RF at 200k. Is he 2RF? That's weird. Oh, is it because they gave him some rent? He's 5'8" 2RF, 200k. Look, maybe a play, but also second row forward, you have got options there that you can fill in with, like, you've got plenty of guns that you can keep, like Tohu, Lukey, Hopgood, Madison. Schuster's now come back, obviously, this week. A lot of people may still have him there. People may be holding on to Cartwright. The fact that he doesn't cover round 13 feels like, to me, that you don't have to rush on him. Look, maybe round 14, he could be a nice little trade in as a downgrade. Like, let's say round 14... let's say Schuster plays for us round 13, and then you take 40 points from him. Round 14, he's on the bye. Maybe you just go down to Hutchinson. Maybe it's an option, but it's not one I'd be looking to just jump on this week. But it's an interesting shout for sure, especially if he does get a few run of games. But always a risk, I think, with Hutchinson that he just reverts back to a utility bench role and becomes like an automatic AE nightmare. Yeah, okay, I think, and then with Latrell, so I was saying on Sunday, probably a little bit on tilt about not owning Latrell, saying, I think I might still buy him during the Origin period. On recollection, though, I looked at his games missed that I've put down for him potentially during the Origin period. 13, maybe 14, 16, 19, and 20, that's like 5 games. And at 887k, probably, yeah, I don't think I'd be looking to buy Latrell too soon. So, yeah, Latrell for me, great option if you have, but he's also someone that you could look to cash in round 13. And I think we'll get into round 13 fullbacks probably more next week. Tuahu, not Tohu. Tuahu. Okay, I'll keep that in mind, Jackson. Thank you for the correction. One thing I'm probably not great at is, the pronunciations. I'm seeing, Mudcrab on Hutchinson. Yeah, once that 5 score rolls out, could hit close to 350, 400. Look, I'm happy to be wrong on Hutchinson for sure. Look, if he does well, that probably means the Roosters are doing well, which I'll be happy with as a fan. But look, even out of the 5, the scores before that are 14, 13, and 21. Like, again, there's still some scores in there that could impact any getting him to 350, 400. Like, he'd have to do quite well. He does have Dragons this week, and then it's Bulldogs in round 14. So look, we could be here round 14, and I look very silly. Right. I've got this slide up for best round 13 front row forward, although I think we spoke about this a lot in detail more last week, and I don't think it's particularly as much of a topic for this week. I haven't seen many of the front row forwards being highly traded in this week. I think the only one was maybe Tarpany. So Tarpany is the 4th most traded in front row forward. I did go for Tarpany last week. The main reason I went for him, okay, firstly, Horsburgh is not $615, $615K. The main reason I went with Tarpany, I think, is just he's on the cusp of just like, he's still playing like these really low minutes. You can see in the minutes 50, 50, 53, 40, 51 in the last 4 games. But he's just kind of bubbling along with this low 60s average. He pumped out a 70 last week, which was great. I'm just hoping that if Josh Papali'i gets named, then hopefully Tarpany's minutes just go up like 2-3 minutes. That is like an extra 4 points in average. And we could be getting Tarpany going 67 plus average. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. He is pretty much bottomed out at 57 break even. So I do think Tarpany, if you haven't got him, I think he's a great trade in this week. For me, my next preference is Tohu Harris, as we'll say it correctly this time. DeBellin has been killing it, scored well last week, but with this new coach for the Dragons, these minutes that he's been playing, which are very high, I'm not sure if they're going to stay. So that 650k does feel slightly like the ship has sailed. Whereas with Harris, basically what you're going to get from him is like big minutes each week. And he has added a few attacking stats to his game in the last couple of years, but also this year's got a few try assists as well. So for me, Harris is definitely someone who's on my radar for next week trading. Obviously, he's on the bye this week. And Corey Horsburgh, to be honest, look, obviously last week was affected by the sin bin against the Eels, so that obviously impacted his score. But now that him and Tarpany are like 4k away from each other, I'd probably just take the safety of Tarpany. And look, Horsburgh could be a bolter for Origin as well, so you never know. You never know. Mudcrab, please make sure you remind me in 4 weeks. I'm happy to be wrong. Joshua, you are simply the best at what you do. Best SuperCoach content and at 8 even close. Keep it up. Joshua, I very much appreciate that. Thank you so much. Okay, so I think this whole thing about Origin rest periods, I spoke about it quite a bit last week. Conscious that we've been going about 50 minutes so far as well. So I think I'll save this for next week for a real big deep dive, I think, into this so we can better assess Origin players to hold or to sell. So I went into this last week, so I think I'll save it again for a deeper dive next week. We'll quickly touch on captaincy, and then we'll get into my team for a bit, and then I think what we'll do is about 10 minutes of Q&A. I think we've probably got time for that this week. So in terms of captaincy, look, it feels pretty easy this week. Nicho Hynes is at home to the Knights. Look, the home game isn't actually at Shark Park. It's somewhere in Coffs Harbour, but it's a Saturday 3 o'clock game. Let me just check the weather. Coffs Harbour weather. If I see a hint of raindrop, no, it's actually it's very dry, 20 degrees and sunny on Saturday. So we're not going to get wet hair Nicho, but we will get a dry track Nicho. So that could easily still be another 100 plus. So look, Nicho Hynes scored 98 last week, scoring 20 when the Sharks scored 20 points. And that involved 1 try assist, line break assist. He did get a second line break assist, but 1 try assist. Knights gotten 26 points put against him by the Titans. Yeah, can easily see this being another game where Hynes just pumps out casually 110. I did briefly think about doing VC Hynes captain for feeder, who does have the Bulldogs away. And interestingly, the Bulldogs are conceding the most points on average to back rowers. Courtesy of NRL SuperCoach Stats, that graphic below me, you can see that the Bulldogs are the worst at conceding to RFs. So initially I thought, well, maybe I could be a bit sneaky and go VC Hynes captain for feeder. But thinking about it more, Fafita had to do a lot to score 110. Hynes did barely anything and scored 98 last week. So I'm kind of thinking maybe just don't play it cute. Don't be too cute with it, and maybe just captain Hynes this week. Maybe if you've got an easy way to do a loophole this week, you could consider the VC Hynes C for feeder. Maybe, I think in terms of other VCs, probably the Trell stands out playing against Parramatta, who, they're pretty leaky. So I think the Trell could easily go 85 plus this week too. For my own team, I haven't really got a strong candidate for a VC. Maybe I might just take a punt on like an Alex Johnston, but it might not matter anyway if I'm pretty set on doing this Captain Hines. So for me, captaincy feels fairly straightforward this week. I mean, you could even maybe take a bit of a pod route on Nathan Cleary. He is playing away at Suncorp. So on a matchup perspective, it doesn't feel the best. So I think for me, Hines just feels like the nice, safe, steady option, I think, for this week. That's covering off, I think, all the major hot topics for round 12. So I think what we'll do is I'll quickly just get into my team, potentially trades that I'm looking at doing, and then we'll do about 5 to 10 minutes of Q&A. So, all right. So what I'm thinking of trades-wise, so I do think I will want to get Billy Smith this week, but I want to hold Manu. If you missed all that, try go to the first kind of 5-10 minutes of the stream. We did talk about Manu and Smith in great detail, but I do want to try keep Manu if I can. So I think what I could do this week is probably just get rid of Alamotti for Smith. It does feel a little bit sideways given that neither do play round 13, but I think I would prefer Smith for this week for sure. Given that Manu's also out, you can see currently with my reserve setup, it would be Reid Marnie, Joe Taps, Cleary, and Buller. Buller has got the Cowboys at Leichhardt, so Buller could be a play, but I kind of feel like I'd feel more confident having Billy Smith versus the Dragons. So also for bringing, like if I brought in Billy Smith this week, I would probably play him this week as well. So my first thought was just doing Alamotti to Billy Smith. Let me try find him here. So that leaves me with like 94k. So the other, obviously the big other cheapie this week is Harrison Edwards. So I could do Pele out for Harrison Edwards. I think I can do that. So it doesn't leave me that much in the bank, but it does get me in 2 cheapies. So it's 2 trades that gets me 2 cheapies for this week. So I could do that. But what I don't love is that it doesn't do anything for me for round 13. And if I did these moves, I would still be on 9 for round 13. So I'll quickly show you how I'm looking for round 13 at the moment. So I've got Gilbert, and look, this is the thing, I'm including Gilbert, but there is a chance that he will play Origin as well. So he could even be one less number as well. So Gilbert Taps is 2, Schuster 3. I'm not counting Matt Dury because I have no idea if he's going to be an option, so I'm really not counting him. So I'm calling it 3. Dillbags 4, Katoa 5, Marzu 6, Garrick 7, Johnston 8, Gutherson 9. I'm not counting Val Holmes because he'll be in Origin. So the way I'm looking at it at the moment is I've got 9. It could be 10. It could even be 8. So if I wanted to get to 13 for round 13, I do need to try to consider that more. So I'm not 100% set on going to Harrison Edwards. The only reason I'm potentially thinking maybe keeping Dury is on the off chance, like if there's any potential injury that happens, maybe he's next man up. But to be honest, like even when he was named on the bench, he might get like 5 minutes. So what I could actually do is Dury out for Edwards, and I can do that via duels. So I could do Dury out for Edwards via swapping one of Gilbert or Taps down. So I could do that potentially, and then I can do the Billy Smith move in for Alamotti. Where's Billy Smith? So I could do something like that. I think you're kind of seeing what I'm getting at. Alamotti to Billy Smith would probably happen, and then it could be like either Pele out to Edwards, or it could be Dury out to Edwards. One thing I have thought about potentially instead of Dury or Pele, I could maybe take out Christian Welch, because I expect Welch to be named for Origin. I was probably looking to trade him out anyway in round 13. So I could do Welch in for Edwards. That leaves me to 88k. It just gives me a bit more flexibility next week for trades, because next week what I could do, so remember next week in round 13 we will have 3 trades available. I do have 2 boosts left, so if I need to, I can boost in round 14. So what I could do next week is I could do, with 288k, I could probably do Dury to Lukey. I could even do Val. So this is the thing. So I think the players who I'm probably definitely looking to sell next week will be Welch and Val Holmes. I think are two guys who I think I'll definitely be selling before by round 13 comes. I could even sell Val this week. It has briefly passed my mind because the Tigers, whilst looks like an easy matchup, they're not really conceding that many Supercoach points. So I'm thinking, could I go early on Val out? Because I can do Val Holmes to Billy Smith, for example, and free up so much cash. I could even do Val Holmes to Edwards via duels. So Val out does kind of bring forward that trade, but I feel like maybe I can just give Val another week against the Tigers. So next week, what I could probably do is Val Holmes out via duels, via Jack Howarth. I could go Val out for a second row forward, so probably say like Tohu Harris, for example. That's one trade that I could easily do in one straight move. I could do Matt Dury out for like another second row forward, maybe like a Lukey. So I could get Tohu Harris and Lukey, and maybe I do then I could maybe then do Grant to Robson, Grant to Jerry Marshall King, or I could even do Nico Hines out if I decide to sell Nico out for like Cody Walker. That would get me to 12 for round 13, and then I could maybe boost to get one more. So that's kind of what I'm thinking at the moment. A little bit all over the place. Hopefully you followed along with that. But basically what I'm thinking, this is kind of what I'm thinking, do I need to get both of Edwards and Billy Smith this week? Because neither helped me for round 13. Could I instead maybe go a week early on a round 13 guy like, I don't know, like I could do Val to say like, look, ideally if Tohu Harris was playing this week, I would probably be more tempted to do Val to Tohu. But because he's on the bye this week, it feels very hard to justify bringing him in. But Val out does open up a lot of options. Anyway, I think I'll probably leave my trade thoughts here. I will probably post, I'll definitely post on Twitter updated thoughts during the week. I could get rid of Pele as well. But yeah, at the moment, what I'm thinking is Alamotti to Billy Smith, and then it could be Welch, it could be Pele, it could be Dury out for Edwards. That's kind of what I'm thinking about the second trade. So the second trade is kind of up in the air. I don't really want to boost this week because I think the boost will be more important next week when I can do maximum of 4 trades. I think that would be quite helpful. Anyway, that's kind of where I'm at the moment with trades. So obviously not very firm on things, but hopefully I'll give you guys a bit more updates during the course of the week. All right, what's the time? It's 9:30, so we'll do 10 minutes of Q&A, and then I think we'll wrap up the stream there. Mudcraft says, I did Pele to Edwards this week. It's the last chance to get off. Otherwise, you'll forever be stuck with him. It is a good point. Like, you're at a point where Pele and Edwards are at close enough value where doing the trade now can work, and it might be the last chance. So I do buy that for sure as well. Callio says, Mr. Callio says, Karaz under 500k right now. Any intention to bring him back? Yeah, for sure. So Karaz, if people are interested, he is very cheap now, 496k, break even of 61. So he's probably at a bottomed out price. So he is at a very nice price to pick up. I think this week against the Titans is a good matchup. If you're a head-to-head player, I really like him as a trade-in because it's a great matchup this week against the Titans. Overall, it just feels difficult when he doesn't cover round 13. Unless you're already sorted for round 13 and you're in that position that you could maybe look to move to Karaz, then I think for sure you could do it. But for me, I think he'll be someone who maybe I consider in round 14 instead. And guys, by the way, if you do enjoy the stream or if you've been enjoying it so far, do please give it a like as well to the 150 of you watching. Great stuff. Ian saying Chance, Manu or Taruva out for Billy Smith. Wouldn't be Chance because he has round 13. I like Manu. It would probably be Taruva, Ian, just because look, I don't mind Taruva, but at least I like the idea of holding on to Manu for round 14. Thoughts on Lomax pick up this week or next, coming back at home, maybe wanting to make a statement. Yeah, so that's another thing we should mention. Max Fine dropped with the new coach coming in, so condolences to anyone who went and brought him last week. Lomax has got a low break even of 36. But it is the Roosters this week. I mean, look, the Roosters did get 48 put on them. He did get 74 the last time he played. I mean, we know he's a previous gun, averaging 56. He's not a bad pickup, but he also doesn't feel like one that you have to trade in. I don't know. It feels like the ceiling is maybe just not quite there with Lomax than what we've seen previously. Is Manu to Johnston a good trade? I do like holding on to Manu. I went on Johnston last week. I effectively traded out Teddy to get Johnston. I traded out someone. I can't even remember my trades last week. To get AJ. I don't know. I get that you're getting a round 13 number. If he's really the only options you have to sell to him, sure. But I think for what we mentioned before, like if I quickly just jump to here, if we look at the Roosters, look, Manu will be missing the next 2 weeks, obviously, so not great, but he'll come back to the Bulldogs, and I suspect he'll still be in the halves during that week. Even if he's not, look, centre against the Bulldogs is fine. Round 16, when Teddy's out, he will probably be playing, I suspect, fullback. And fullback against the Knights in round 16 makes him almost a must. And so for those couple of reasons, I like this little period in between 14 to 19. I don't mind it. So I don't mind holding on to Manu. Warbrick to AJ. No, I sold Warbrick ages ago. I sold Warbrick ages ago to get Manu and Garrick. Anyway, it beats me. I'll find it out later. Ian says you have plenty of numbers for 13. If you've got plenty of numbers, then maybe you could sell Chance. But remember, Chance does cover round 14 as well, so he is handy for that point too. Would you sell Teddy? Way too much faith. I'd give him one more week. Dragons, break-even's not crazy high. It's 81. No Manu, so I think that could mean better things for Teddy. So I'd keep for one more week. And then sell in round 13, 100%. Too late for Jack DeBellin at 650k. Yeah, for me, it feels a little bit too late. And especially now with this new coach coming in, I'd like to see how he plays minutes. If his minutes stay the same, then maybe we can expect the same. But I do think I'd prefer the likes of Tarps or Tohu Harris ahead of Jack DeBellin at this stage. I traded out Ford. That's right. Thank you, Ian, for the reminder. Of course, yeah. Of course, I traded out a round 13 player that didn't help me. Did it? Last reserve: Billy, Croker, Schuster, Edwards, or Sele. Who's Billy? Is that Billy Smith? If it's Billy Smith, then play him. It's a Dragons matchup. He's got an upside. Should I trade out Preston or Wilton and bring in a round 13 player like Lukey? If I was to sell one of Preston or Wilton, let's see. Preston covers 16 and 19. Sharks miss round 17. I mean, Wilton, I think, is a better option. Actually, the Bulldogs also miss round 17. Tough one. Can I get back to you next week? Is it a must trade this week? Look, if I had to sell one of the two, probably Preston. At least Wilton's got probably a little bit more upside than Wilton's got more upside, I think, than Preston. Am I holding Hosking through the bye round? This is the thing. I'm not 100% sure. So this is kind of the reason why I'm thinking maybe I do Welch out for Edwards this week. I mean, look, I guess I don't have to sell Welch next week. I could just keep him, especially if Gilbert doesn't play Origin. I've got Taps and Gilbert. They could cover me for this week. But for me, Hosking could potentially be a sell next week. Like, it could be Val Holmes out next week. It could be Hosking. It could be Welch, and it could be Grant. Those could be the four that I do for a boost. Or I could just hold him. No, I'm not sure yet. I want to give him one more week. To be honest, I kind of hope that he just gets benched on Thursday and just makes the decision for us. And I can just say, sweet, Hosking out, I'll sell him. But I don't think it's going to be made that easy for us. Any love for Davey with Sean Lane out? So Davey's been named to start again this week as well, and probably looked to. His role already looked okay with Lane in the team. He was named to start when Lane was starting anyway. Scored 51 last week, 55 in base in 80 minutes is pretty solid. 438k does feel like it feels a tad awkward. So I feel like it's a bit of a weird one where I'm not sure how much money generation you're going to get, and the points output that he gives you are you just better off going, take Lukey for example. Lukey is about 100k more expensive, which is granted decent amount of coin, but Lukey's floor is probably about the same as Davey, but I think he just possesses much more upside. And so I think also with Davey, be conscious that he misses round 14. So he's not one who, he could be a solid kind of midi cash cow, but I'm not sure how much. I don't think you're going to get a great equation of cash gen nor points. So he kind of feels in between for me. How long should I try hold my last boost till? Look, if you're really short for round 13 and you really want to make sure you try to get 13 out, I think it's okay to use a last boost in round 13. Otherwise, I would try to maybe hold off on that until maybe say round 20. Round 20 will be the last week after the Origin, and then you could use a boost to try to get back in a lot of the Origin guns that people may have sold. That's maybe one place where a boost could be handy. Is it okay to not have a full 13 for round 13? Definitely. This is something I should also think about. Is it worth me breaking my team to try to get to 13 for the bye week? I kind of feel like it is important to try to get to 13 because I think the way that I'm seeing a lot of other people's teams set up, I do think they seem to be getting out 13 this week, or next week I should say. If you can get to it easily without sacrificing too much in a team, then I think it's a good aim. If it's really difficult and it will really hurt you doing so, like you're selling like a Fafita, a Hines and a Grant, like you're sacrificing a lot of Origin guns, it's one of those instances where I'd say maybe just try a run out 11 or 12 and you might be okay. And fingers crossed the players that you don't own don't go too big and hurt you. All right, we'll do 3 more questions and I think we might wrap it up there. Cody says, Karaz or Lomax this week, planning on holding both for the rest of the season, but which to get first? If you're planning to get them for the rest of the season, I prefer Karaz. I think he's probably got more potential, in my opinion, to be a season keeper, and he is also a little bit cheaper as well. So yeah, look, if you're saying which one to get first, if you're planning on getting both of them, get Lomax first because he covers round 13, and then you can get Karaz maybe after his bye. Preston or Welch, last reserve. So Bulldogs, I think I would go Preston. Preston has got the Titans, so I think there's maybe some attacking upside. So I think I'd chance it with Preston. I don't think that 68 from Welch feels like a bit of an outlier. I think Welch's average is about mid-50s, which I think Preston is about the same, but I think he's just got more upside. So for me, Preston of the two. All right, one more question, and then I think we'll wrap it up. What to do with Willie Army? Do you think he'll be back? Look, I've got really no idea with Braden Williami. I think the Warriors seem to just be playing too well that they don't really need to bring him back. I might need to consult Anton Posa from on Twitter because he knows more about the Warriors than probably anyone else. I am looking at the casualty ward. It says Williami calf round 13, but I don't know how accurate that is. So if you've got him, if you can, hold him for one more week. And if he's not there for you next week, just move him on, I guess, at that point. All right, everyone, we'll wrap up the stream there. I did see a comment from earlier as well saying, why don't I post these up on Spotify? I'll admit I just completely forgot last week, but I will look to upload the audio of this stream up to Spotify so people can listen back if they're at work or driving, whatever it may be. So I'll try to do that straight after the stream if I can. But I'll put a tweet out as well when I have done that. So if you're keen to listen to the audio, I'll hopefully let you do so via Spotify or any other podcasting platforms. But thank you all for joining me. Please do give the stream a like on the way out. Really appreciate you all joining in with me on this Tuesday evening. Hope you all have a great week. Any other questions, keep putting them in the comments below. We'll try to get back to all of you. But otherwise, good luck for the round ahead. Catch you on the next one. See ya.